morning. Thank you for joining us today for Together We Walk, a Dementia Journey, developed and presented by Hospice of the Western Reserve. My name is Jennifer Cardellini. I'm the Director for Consumer Information at Benjamin Rose Institute on Aging and the co-project director for the Administration for Community Living Alzheimer's Disease Program Initiatives project, which is called Expansion of Dementia-Capable Communities within Urban and Rural Settings in Ohio using evidence-based and informed programming. This session today is being offered as a part of this Administration for Community Living project. Today's webinar will be recorded. During the webinar, you may submit a question at any time using the control panel on the right-hand side of your screen. We have staff monitoring the questions box to convey your questions to our presenter and to answer any technical questions you may have. We are conducting an evaluation of our dementia education sessions required by ACL as a part of this project to help us improve dementia education programs and to help us think about future services and supports for individuals with dementia and those who care for them in your community. Last week, you should have received an email with a link to the pre-session evaluation questionnaire and a document titled Dementia Education Evaluation Information that further explains the evaluation. If you registered this morning or did not have a chance to complete the pre-session questionnaire yesterday, we ask that you please complete this now using the links provided in the chat. I now have the pleasure of introducing our keynote presenter for this morning's presentation, Sally Tomko. With over 38 years of experience, Sally has practiced in the ICU ER and as a business development specialist for a large physician practice, home care, and hospice agency. Currently, she is a provider relations manager for Hospice of the Western Reserve, serving on their Dementia Collaborative Committee and overseeing 3 dementia support groups on Cleveland's West Side. Please join me in welcoming Sally Tomko.
Thank you so much for the introduction. As she mentioned, my name is Sally Tomko. I am from the Hospice of the Western Reserve. I really deeply want to thank Benjamin Rose Institute on Aging for allowing us this opportunity to bring this presentation to you today. As she mentioned, I work for Hospice of the Western Reserve. I'm coming to you from one of our hospice houses, which is the Ames Family Hospice House up here in Westlake, Ohio. So let's get started with the presentation. Maybe you're having breakfast or brunch or starting lunch, but grab something as together we walk on a dementia journey. So today I'm going to define dementia. I'm going to identify 4 types of dementia. I'm going to explain the brain changes that are caused by dementia and demonstrate the benefits of hospice in the dementia patient and the caregiver's world. So dementia defined. Dementia is the loss of cognitive functioning, the ability to think, remember, or reason, to such an extent that it interferes with a person's daily life and activities. And these functions include memory, language skills, visual perception, problem solving, self-management, and the ability to focus and pay attention. Most losses of cognitive function are progressive and permanent. And if you are closely connected to someone with dementia, you will feel that the name dementia is very appropriate. Oftentimes, the person with dementia is fully aware that something's wrong with their mind. However, they don't have any idea what that something is. It is important to remember that dementia is a syndrome living under an umbrella, a collection of dementia symptoms. A few important notes include that 2 parts of the brain are dying. It cannot be fixed or stopped. It's constantly changing, and it is a terminal disease, but then again, so is life. So let's look at that umbrella that I talked about, the many types of dementia. Dementia is an umbrella term that describes the collection of symptoms that are caused by the disorders affecting the brain. It's not one specific disease. Dementia affects thinking, behavior, and the ability to perform everyday tasks. And brain function is affected to interfere with the person's normal social or working life. The most common of these is Alzheimer's disease. It's the most common, as I said, and it accounts for approximately 40 to 70% of all dementia. The next is vascular dementias. Vascular dementia is the second most common type, and this accounts for about 15 to 25% of all dementias. One of the ways to remember the vascular dementias is sometimes that might be brought on by someone who possibly has had a stroke or even mini strokes. There's the Lewy body dementia, and this accounts for somewhere between 2 and 20% of all dementias. And what it means is that there's protein deposits. That's what's actually the Lewy bodies that develop on the nerve cells in the brain. There's also frontal temporal dementias, and this accounts for approximately 2 to 4% of all dementias. And what we find with the frontal temporal dementias is this usually comes on kind of early in life, possibly many times in the 40s and 50s, and tends to have at many times a very rapid progression. There's other dementias that are listed here. There's dementias that are actually associated with Parkinson's disease. Now, I just want to stop to mention, just because you have Parkinson's doesn't mean you have dementia. But we do find a lot of intermixing or intermingling between the Parkinson's and sometimes another diagnosis on top of that of dementia. There's also Huntington's disease, and most often this is inherited. And this is where nerve cells in the brain break down over time. And many times we'll see this start at age, most of the time, as I said, between the 30s and 40s. There's also the Creutzfeldt-Jakob, and this is infected tissue. And many times this happens during transplants that people may receive, or maybe eating contaminated meat. There's also normal pressure hydrocephalus and the Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome. And that in itself is a degenerative brain disorder from the lack of thiamine, or B1. And many times we see that lack of the B1 in alcohol abuse, maybe through a dietary deficiency, prolonged vomiting, eating disorders, and sometimes even the effects of chemo. And like I said, there's many, many different types of other dementias, sometimes affected with multiple head traumas, HIV. There's many in that other umbrella. So what I like to mention a lot of times, because sometimes someone will come to me and say, oh my gosh, my grandmother just got diagnosed with dementia or Alzheimer's. I can't remember which one. And many people don't realize that dementia is that umbrella under which you have all the different types of dementias. And a lot of people just don't realize that. There are brain changes, and understanding the changes in the brain is key. And this should drive our approach to care in working with patients living with dementia. And why is that? Because the brain runs everything, as we know. There's the limbic system, and that's where we have the thrive to survive, the flight, fright, or fight. There's the frontal and prefrontal portions of the brain. And if we think about those sections of the brain, those are the last to develop in children. And those areas of the brain are the first to go in dementia. And these areas of the brain, the frontal and prefrontal, as I mentioned, are responsible for decision making, our perspective on things, empathy towards others, and even impulses. 5 ways the brain is impacted, and that's through seeing, hearing, feeling, smelling, and tasting. And I'll go a little bit further into those a little bit later. So one of the things we have to remember is that because of those impacts to the brain affecting those senses, people that are diagnosed with dementia can't perceive danger. They might have an increased need for sugar or salt. You might notice they're grabbing that salt shaker, or they want that candy more often. There's edges of the peripheral vision that slows or deteriorates. This is called scuba vision or binocular vision. So if you have that opportunity right now, I'd kind of like to show you how you can experience that scuba vision where the edges are kind of diminished. So what I'd like everyone to do is kind of put up a pair of binoculars to your eyes and kind of look around the room a little bit, and you can see how that peripheral vision has changed quite a bit. This actually changes our approach with people with dementia, meaning that we always want to approach them from the front, getting down to their level at an eye level, because sometimes if we approach someone from behind or even tap them on the shoulder, they might get frightened if they're experiencing or have that scuba vision. There's hearing loss that also increases, and their sensation to temperature will diminish. So this can affect maybe sometimes if they're going outside and you're trying to get that winter coat on and they're not realizing that it's -10 below up here in the Cleveland area. All in all, we need to remember that the brain size is reduced by 1/3 and the chemistry is constantly changing. So let's talk a little bit more about some of those brain changes. I talked about vision or seeing, and it's impacted differently as the disease progresses. As I mentioned, first loss is that edge vision or the peripheral vision, and safety issues can become present as the world becomes smaller and smaller. Therefore, if edge vision or peripheral vision is diminished, when another person approaches, as I mentioned, that person might get frightened or might try to flight or try to get away. As the disease advances, the center of vision is like looking out of binoculars, as I mentioned. And as it advances, a person can't determine if something's 3D or 2D. For example, they can't distinguish between an apple or a picture of an apple. And this can lead the observer to notice maybe somebody doing some odd things, such as picking at a patterned carpet, or maybe a tablecloth on a table, thinking that an object is there, or even trying to attempt or place a glass on a table and missing the table. The brain is not processing the various distances or dimensions. Hearing or auditory. Hearing is processed by the temporal lobes, and for 98% of people, it's the left side of the brain where formal language development occurs, while the right side maintains rhythmic control. The left side of the brain is affected by various types of dementia, more so than the right. Therefore, people can maintain their ability to chit-chat with people, autonomic, kind of social chit-chat back and forth, and continue a rhythm of speech, as with music or poetry or prayer. But often dementia patients can sing a song even though they can't put the words together while speaking. Additionally, dementia patients can move rhythmically, that automatic rhythmic movement, such as dancing. There's the feeling and doing, the touch or feel, interpreting what we do. So people with dementia lose vocabulary production, comprehension, and speech production exists on the left side of the brain. Unfortunately, the right side is preserved. So when we think about that, the right side of the brain, which is preserved, actually houses sometimes some forbidden words, swear words, for example, or different talk about sex or possibly racial slurs. So that preserved part of that side of the brain may still store some of those things. Touching and then doing something with the sensation sometimes can create a safety concern. There's external inputs that we get from touch, like a hot stove or things like that. And these are affected. That part of the brain is affected. So those sensations are not processed and interpreted correctly. Example, as I mentioned, is a hot stove that may cause a burn with little or no interpretation by that person that there's heat or hot coming from that stove. So importantly, the safety is lost, but the curiosity is still preserved. So it's important to recognize that a normal brain is affected by these neurodegenerative disorders. And like I said, the brain has the result of 1/3 of its size of the normal brain. So next I'm going to talk about smell for the olfactory and the sensation of taste, also called gustation. The smell and taste are integrated more with the limbic system. So this is important. So if it smells bad or it tastes bad, we'll avoid it. However, as this interpretation is negatively activated by the disease or how it's affected by it, the safety function is diminished or absent. And the I see and I want overrides taste and smell that occurs in the higher areas. And as such, dementia patients may not identify with something as being harmful. However, sweets and salt may still, as I mentioned, provide pleasure because those tastes are recognized in the higher brain. So ultimately, a dementia patient may want desserts while they're not recognizing their body odors or elimination odors. Finally, as working memory involves all the brain and is impacted early on, long-term memory in the hippocampus might stay intact for some time. So sometimes we lose some of those positive and negative types of reasoning with the brain, and people keep emotional memory, even though losing their long-term or short-term memory. So let's look at normal aging versus dementia. So normal aging, that's where we're not able to remember or recall information we learned from a year ago or even more. With dementia, you're not able to recall information or details about recent events or conversations. With normal aging, maybe we're not able to remember the name of an acquaintance. That can happen often. But with dementia, a person may not be recognizing or knowing a family member or a close friend. With normal aging, forgetting things and events and things that occasionally happens. But with dementia, this happens much more frequently. With normal aging, we might have a little difficulty sometimes finding the right words to say. And with dementia, there's frequent pausing or substitution. And that's because the person's trying to find the right words to say. In normal aging, there's worrying about the memory of friends or family. With dementia, relatives or friends are worried about your memory. With normal aging, people can live an independent life. But with dementia, a person relies on others to live their life. With normal aging, sometimes we're not putting things away properly. And with dementia, maybe people are putting them in a strange or a weird location, such as maybe finding the car keys in the refrigerator, or maybe finding a book in the microwave. With normal aging, we're still able to operate appliances, as I mentioned, such as a microwave or an iron or a stove, and we can learn new skills. And with dementia, those people are usually unable to operate nor learn how to use a common appliance. With normal aging, there's mood changes that can be very appropriate. And with dementia, mood changes sometimes can be unpredictable. With normal aging, there's changes in interest. And with dementia, sometimes we see a decrease in interest, even in sometimes things that were once enjoyed. We need to remember, dementia is not a choice. It's not something that people choose. It's something that happens to people. Although with some dementia, there may be habits that may contribute to the development of dementia. It is an illness that no one willingly chooses for themselves. And we need to be passionate, and we need to recognize that people are not choosing to be non-compliant. People are not choosing to be combative. When it's happening to them, it's not their choice. It's beyond their control. And a person living with dementia doesn't have the ability or rationale to change how they behave. And this is key. We can change how we respond to their behaviors. Next, I would like to show you a video. It's about Lewis and Gwen. and it's called It's Still About Us. This is an actual patient of ours and his caregiver, his spouse, on service with Hospice of the Western Reserve, still on service. So it's a local Cleveland couple, and it's a really nice video that shows Louis and Gwen as they've journeyed through the stages of dementia and experience and appreciate the benefits of going through this journey together and the benefits of hospice care. Julie's going to share that video. Just wait for a second. beautiful, beautiful story.
We're having a little bit of
feedback, currently.
I think if you have your speakers on your
computer.
Yeah, my speaker is on. I'm not sure if possibly everyone else needs to mute.
I think we're good.
Feedback seems to have stopped.
Yeah, hopefully that feedback is gone. Okay, great. Before I start with Brian's story, what a great story about Louis and Gwen and that video about one of our patients and just kind of taking a brief look at their journey. What a beautiful couple. What a beautiful, beautiful journey. Louis is just such a beautiful soul, along with his wife who's been caring for him for so long. I find it hard during that video to kind of sit still, especially when the music comes on. Just very, very inspiring. So I hope you enjoyed that. The next thing I'd like to do is I'd like to read to you Brian's story. And this is kind of a participation type of thing. So what I would like you to do, I'm not sure if you have a pencil or paper nearby, but if you do, if you could grab that pencil and paper, or if you have your cell phone or just anywhere you can scratch it down. Couple things I'd like you to do, and it's very simple. We're not going to share this or anything. So what I'd like you to do is first write down your favorite hobby, or even if you don't have pen and paper, just think, what is your favorite hobby? Gardening or what have you. Next, I would like you to jot down your favorite scents. So what's your favorite scent? Seeing, smelling, hearing, tasting, feeling. Next, jot down or place it up in your memory there, your favorite person. Who's your favorite person? And now your favorite place. Or as we hear now, a lot of times, where's your happy place, right? We all have those. And now if you could jot down your favorite food, or at least think about your favorite food. Okay, so next I'm going to read Brian's story. Hello, my name is Brian and I have dementia. I have the misfortune of being with it enough to understand what dementia is and what this diagnosis means for me. I know that it'll eventually take my life, but that the process will be very slow. It saddens me when I think about what's to come, so I'm trying to make the most of each day. But it's becoming more and more difficult. You see, I feel as if I lose more control of my life every single day. There were so many facets of my life that were enjoyable to me, and I've watched them slip away one by one. The hardest thing is when they took my license away. You see, one of my favorite things to do was to meet up with the boys and shoot the breeze. We'd talk about sports, grandkids, spouses, everything. Unfortunately, I reached the point where I was no longer able to drive. I kept getting lost. And finally, somebody spilled the beans to my family. That's what started this whole diagnostic process. Although deep down, I knew I shouldn't drive, but I didn't want to give up my independence. The family was great at pitching in to take care of me or wherever I needed to go initially, but I guess I became a burden. Then they hired someone to drive me where I needed to go, kind of like a driving Miss Daisy. Unfortunately, I began having trouble concentrating and keeping up with conversations. The boys were annoyed that I would go out to lunch with, and they lost patience with me. And according to the doctor, you lose your short-term memory when you have dementia. Everybody kept saying to me, "Why do you keep asking me the same questions over and over? Didn't I just tell you that? I don't do this to make you angry. I don't remember. I'm sorry. So now I just isolate myself because I'm embarrassed. So now that favorite hobby that you had, toss that away, the one you wrote down. It's no fun getting old, especially if you have dementia. There's things that are a normal part of the aging process. Some people can't hear as well. Others get the jitters, they can't walk well, or they don't handle objects as well as they used to. I can't hear well. I can't do the task that I used to enjoy. I'm losing my sense of touch and smell. At least I can see, but I'm still challenged because my depth perception is off. Whoop! Sorry I bumped into you. This is getting hard to deal with. So now, all of you, I'd like you to toss your favorite scents. Did I ever tell you about my granddaughter? Oh, she's the love of my life. She was born after I retired. I never thought I'd be a grandpa. I was so elated when she was born. I was actually her babysitter from ages 1 to 4. We did so many fun things together. We would visit the parks and spend entire summers going to as many different ice cream stands as we could, and then deciding whose was the best. I also love reading to her. She made me so proud when she graduated from high school. She used to call me her very favorite papa, but she doesn't even come see me anymore. I think she got frustrated and angry when I didn't recognize her. It upset me so much when she would say, "It's me, Papa. Don't you know who I am?" I'm trying really hard to recognize her. I didn't know who she was, but I knew she loved me. She stopped becoming because it was too painful for her when I didn't recognize her. I guess it's a blessing that I don't realize that she doesn't come. Now toss away your favorite person. Well, they've made me leave my house and go to a nursing home. I never thought that day would come. My kids promised me they'd take care of me, but they said I was wandering and they were concerned about my safety. I was just trying to go to work. I never missed a day of work. And now they won't let me go. They never ask me where I'm going. They just make me come back every time. Everything's being taken away from me. Oh, please help me feel useful. Give me something to do. I'm not dead. How much more of this can I take? So take away now your favorite place. I'm having difficulty finding my plate. I don't know why they put white plates on a white tablecloth with white napkins. It all looks like one big blob to me, and they wonder why I have challenges feeding myself. Heck, I was told that I could eventually forget how to chew. Can you imagine that? Oh, and to top it off, food just doesn't taste the same. I can still taste things that are sweet, so I enjoy my sugary treats. But unfortunately, everybody keeps taking those things away because they keep telling me they're not good for me. Are you kidding? I want my sweets. Don't I deserve some joy in my life? If other foods don't taste good, how come I can't have my sweets? Won't kill me. Toss away your favorite food. Well, I seem to have totally regressed now. I can't speak anymore. I wear diapers. I have to have people feed me, clothe me, toilet and bathe me. Oh, it feels humiliating. It's like becoming a baby all over again. It's a blessing that I am, for the most part, unaware of my current condition. So please recognize, I'm not gone. I'm still here in this shell of a body. Don't I deserve dignity? I still hear what's being said around me. I wish someone would connect with me. I've always enjoyed music, so sing to me, play me some of my favorite songs. If you don't know, ask someone who's close to me. Read to me, connect to me. I'm not invisible. I'm not dead. I have dementia. I just have dementia. Did I tell you I have dementia? Remember that behaviors are not chosen by a person with dementia. They're reflective of their current stage in the disease process or another condition or concern that they're experiencing. Remember, they cannot change their behaviors, but we can change how we react to them and their behaviors. Together we walk. Thank you for taking this journey here during this presentation. We need to walk together and we need to walk in each other's shoes. The next slide shows some resources. In case you want to jot those down, I'll leave those up for a moment. And the next slide shows how you can reach us at Hospice of the Western Reserve. Our website is hospicewr.org and our phone number is 800-707-8922. Again, my name is Sally Tomko. I'm a provider relations with Hospice of the Western Reserve. And now I think if there's any questions that were in the chat section, we can stop this here and we can open up any questions that we may have.
Thank you so much, Sally. This was a fantastic presentation. We really appreciated you sharing some of the experiences of those who you served with Hospice of the Western Reserve. We do have a few questions that have been provided. So the first person has asked, are there any resources specifically for those with early onset dementia?
With early onset, and I'm not sure what they're meaning as far as resources, like if they're looking for hospice resources or palliative care resources. So I'll address that real quick. Hospice for someone that is deemed to have 6 months or less of life expectancy and is not receiving any type of curative treatments. So that would be someone with cancer, with like chemo or radiation, but we look at that 6 months or less. Palliative care is different. Palliative care is different from hospice, and that it is for symptom management and symptom control. The person does not have to be deemed to have 6 months or less of life expectancy. They can have many, many weeks and months and years, but the goal there is for symptom management. The goal there is to keep with those constant, frequent trips to the physician office or the ER or hospitalizations. And we do have people with dementia that are on our palliative care program. So I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Great.
Another attendee has asked more specifically about their personal journey. So they have a spouse who was diagnosed with vascular dementia several years ago and then received a new diagnosis and changed to Alzheimer's disease. They wonder why that might happen.
Okay. I can't say, you know, as a nurse, because I don't have the medical records in front of me. So they may have initially thought that there was a vascular reason. And as I mentioned before, the vascular has a lot to do with like mini strokes or things like that, or vascular disease. And then they switched over to the Alzheimer. Do know that sometimes there can be mixed dementias where you have both. You have the vascular and the Alzheimer's. So there's also mixed dementias. If you want to know that more specifically, I would say go back to your healthcare provider and ask them, like if they're saying it's one or the other, or actually is it a combination or a mixed dementia?
Thank you. That's great advice. Our next question, could you discuss the genetics of dementia at all?
I'm not a geneticist, so I really can't get really deep into the genetics of the dementia. And as I mentioned, there are some that are inherited, such as the Huntington's disease and things like that. And there are certainly other dementias that can be inherited. And we kind of see that there's kind of a familial aspect to that. I would say talk to your healthcare provider, or sometimes if you do have a family member and you're a caregiver for someone where it has been mentioned it's an inherited disease, many times they can connect you with a geneticist that can go through and specifically explain based on that specific type of dementia, specifically how possibly there can be that inheritedness or familial inheritedness within your family. I hope that helps.
Thank you. Our next attendee asked, how can I balance my loved one's desire for sleep with making sure they receive their needed nutrition?
Right. Good question. Yeah, they do like those sweets. You know, sometimes when we have that, maybe it's they want that whole big giant, you know, piece of pie or what have you. So sometimes maybe you want to scale it down. You know, they want that they see that piece of pie, maybe give just a little piece of pie, and maybe save it for throughout the day, or even, you know, that Hershey's Kiss or what have you. So instead of giving that one big dose of the sweets, maybe just a little bit smaller bites, but more frequent throughout the day, so that they're not getting 5 pieces of pie during the day, but maybe getting smaller little increments, and those small increments are maybe satisfying that need for that sensation of the sweets.
Yeah, that's great advice. Someone asked, how do I find a support group?
Support group, good question. Yes. There's many ways to find a support group. I know we have a lot of them up here. I oversee 3. I'm actually starting a 4th up here in my area. So sometimes you can, on like a county website, like up here we have lorainecounty.org, that you can go on that website and it'll show support groups. You can also possibly reach out to a case manager or a social worker at a hospital. Many times they have those. A hospice agency will certainly have many lists of different support groups. If your loved one is living in a facility, many times there are facilities that are overseeing and doing those support groups. You can also reach out to churches and other institutions. Another way, I'm just rattling off a whole bunch of different ways, is many times in addition to hospice, home health agencies, either the medical or non-medical home health agencies will also be aware of different support groups in your area. I hope that helps as well.
Thank you for that information. Another question someone
Rose. Whoops, I forgot one. Reach out to Benjamin Rose Institute on Aging.
Absolutely, we'd be happy to connect folks with support groups that we're aware of as well. Another question someone asked, how can I balance my loved one's desire for sleep with need to keep them fed and hydrated?
Yeah. That can be difficult because many times people with dementia are going to want to sleep all the time. Sometimes we kind of have to take a look at how we have their activities of daily living, how we have those spread out through the day, because many times we'll find that they're sleeping all day and then they're up all night. So I'm sure there's probably a lot of hands or a lot of head shaking going like that. So sometimes we want to maybe space that through the day. And what can happen sometimes in the morning is we're doing a lot of very tasking things in the morning. So we're getting up and we're having breakfast and we're brushing teeth and we're combing hair and we're bathing and we're getting dressed. And sometimes that can cause a lot of fatigue. So just as I mentioned with the sweets, sometimes what you want to do is kind of maybe space that out through the day. because doing that all at once in the morning can be very tiring, and then that person may sleep for a very long time, and we're trying to get them up for the meals. So maybe spacing out some of those activities will also help with that. The other thing we want to make sure that we're doing too is making sure that those naps aren't way too long during the day, so that, you know, someone's up all night long, or spacing in some little bits of activity, like maybe walks around the house or walks outside, you know, getting some nature in and things like that. But as I mentioned, just with the suites, we kind of have to take, you know, and think about how we're doing in spacing out the activities of daily living. One of the big ones with that too, especially if you have a physician visit or having to make a visit to a healthcare professional, because that can be very, very taxing for the person with dementia. So we kind of want to make sure we space those things out.
Thank you. We have time for maybe one or two more questions. We did get another question in from someone who asked, what can be done for a person who continually picks at clothing, maybe their depends, or removes clothing?
Okay. So with that behavior, one of the things, first and foremost, that you absolutely want to make certain of is that that person is not experiencing pain. Sometimes we'll see someone picking at clothing or doing a repetitive behavior because they're actually experiencing pain. Maybe that person has a history of maybe back pain or maybe hip pain. So that person might, you know, and if you're aware of that, they could be sitting in a chair, maybe sitting on one hip, and that's causing pain, and they can't verbalize that pain to you. So instead, you know, they're picking, or maybe they're, you know, they're tapping their hand on a chair or something like that. So make sure first and foremost that we're assessing for pain. Maybe with that picking or tugging at the diaper, maybe that's an indication that they need to use the restroom. You know, maybe they're saying to you, okay, I need to go to the bathroom. They're wearing that diaper. Maybe they have a lot of incontinence, but, you know, maybe actually just getting up and going to the restroom might relieve that. They're sensing that they have to use the restroom. They're using, you know, that depends or what have you because of the incontinence. But with that sensation of going to the restroom is automatically feeding to them that behavior of, I'm supposed to be getting up and going to the restroom. Also other things that we can use, anything you can use for distraction. If they're, you know, picking or what have you, maybe you have an activity blanket to stop that picking, or maybe supplying a, you know, a stack of wash rags where they can be doing folding as opposed to the picking. There's a number of different things that can be done, but I wanted to mention a few.
Thank you so much. And thank you again to all of our attendees who have submitted such wonderful questions and been so engaged throughout the presentation. Sally, we thank you so much on behalf of Benjamin Rose for being here and sharing such an informative presentation with us. I now am going to pass it over to Branka Premedica, who is going to tell you briefly about BRI Care Consultation, which is a care coaching program available for families impacted by dementia in Cuyahoga, Athens, and Washington Counties in Ohio through this Administration for Community Living project. Branka? Branka, we are not able to hear your audio.
Thank you very much, Jenny. I could not locate my little bar, but I located it, so I am on right now. My apologies for the slight delay. I'm going to talk a little bit about BRI Care Consultation. So this is a program that, you know, when Sally was talking about all the struggles that families may face in helping somebody, their loved one, with dementia, this program is an ideal program for those individuals, and it could be a great program to help find the appropriate support group. So for those of you that have questions on how to locate the best support group, this program not only helps you do that, but it helps in many, many other ways as well. So we'll jump into that a little bit. So this is a telephone and email-based care coaching program. So you can use it in the comfort of your own home, car, wherever you tend to take phone calls. And it assists and supports adults with or at risk for developing dementia. So even if an individual is at risk, this program could be very beneficial too. And it also helps those with intellectual and developmental disabilities. The program not only assists those individuals with dementia, but it also helps caregivers cope with their stress, with their struggles, and in caring for their loved ones. And so really helps the entire unit. The program is available at no cost to you, no cost whatsoever for 1 year. It is generously funded by the Administration for Community Living. Next slide, please. So how does a personal care consultant help? So what's nice about this program is that you're linked with one care consultant. I'll share with you the agencies that are delivering this program, but one care consultant is going to be linked with providing help. And this care consultant helps to find and get connected to health and community services. It helps prioritize based on a very simple, what we call action step type plan. And it's really based on individual and family needs. It helps communicate with loved ones, family and friends about care, and really managing those difficult care situations and behaviors. Staying in touch with individuals and families so adjustments can be made as situations change. And so sometimes you go to a program and a care plan is developed, and maybe it's tweaked every few months, but in this program, every time you get on the phone with a care consultant, that action plan is adjusted because situations change all the time. This also helps assist with getting other family and friends involved. So for those individuals that it may be challenging or difficult to ask for help, the care consultant really helps with guiding families and individuals with that approach and being there for you as an emotional support. So a lot of times individuals and families talk to care consultants about just what their struggles are and what they're going through because they may not have anybody else to talk to, but a care consultant can be there to help. Next slide, please. So where can you get this wonderful program? So we have a few, as a part of this administration community living project, we have partners in several counties, including Athens and Washington Counties in southeastern Ohio and urban Cuyahoga County. So since Hospice of Western Reserve is in Cuyahoga County, I'll start out with that a little bit. I'm gonna start with Benjamin Rose Institute on Aging. The program is actually called We Care Because You Do at the Benjamin Rose Institute on Aging. So if you just call 216-791-8000, you ask for We Care Because You Do, you'll get connected to this program. Also for individuals with intellectual or developmental disabilities, Welcome House is a provider for those individuals, and you can contact them at the number 440-356-2330. And then we have Athens County as a part of a larger initiative, Athens County Cares, United Seniors of Athens County. You can get linked through them by contacting 740-594-3535. And then of course, Washington County through O'Neill Center at 740-373-3914. Next slide, please. I think that's it. And so, we encourage you to contact one of these organizations to get linked to a care consultant, and they could help you along the way. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Veronica. And I want to thank you all again for joining us for Together We Walk, a Dementia Journey. A recording of today's session will be made available at www.benrose.org on the event registration page and in our resource library. We are offering more webinars like this for community organizations and families impacted by dementia each quarter of this ACL project. We hope you will join us for our next community webinar on October 25th. To stay up to date about our upcoming webinars, please visit our website, www.benrose.org. In the chat, you will see a link to a post-session questionnaire required by ACL. You will also be receiving it via email later today. We ask that you please complete the post-session questionnaire within 1 week following today's session. Your response will help us improve dementia education programs and help us think about future services and supports for individuals with dementia and those who care for them in your community. Thank you again for joining us, and have a great rest of your day.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.